I'm a simple man. I see a silhouette of a hatchet, I get excited. For this SSR project, I'm going to talk about a classic book that I have read several years ago and now have the chance to revisit once again. Gary Paulsen's Hatchet. And no, Gary is not the main character of this book, but is, believe it or not, the author of it. This is Gary Paulsen. He was a 3-time Newbery Honor winner, won the Margaret Edwards Award back in 1997, and had written many beloved titles such as Woodsong, The Legend of Bass Reeves, Dancing Carl, and about 180 versions of the book I'm about to talk about. Well, at least that's what Goodreads is telling me. He even wrote 4 additional books to accompany the original title, which came to be known as the Hatchet Adventure series. The books in this series include The River, Brian's Winter, Brian's Return, and Brian's Hunt. While I've never read those books before, I think I'm better off not reading it because I'm a bit worried that it'll ruin the initial impact Hatchet had. But during the process of typing the script, I found out that Paulsen died of cardiac arrest back in 2021. Thanks a lot, Wikipedia. But we don't have time to more now. Let's talk about the beginning chapters of Hatchet, along with its colorful set of characters. In a Cessna 406 about 8,000 feet above and away from here, we are introduced to the main character in the form of a 13-year-old boy named Brian Robeson. Alongside him, we are also introduced to the airplane pilot whose name was either Jim, Jake, or Ned Beatty. I'm sure this guy will definitely stick around for a while. Anyways, Brian is heading towards the Canadian oil fields to visit his father over the summer. And the reason behind this is because after a certain secret came to light, his parents divorced. Talk about a colorful set of characters. So he can visit his father during the summer and spend the school year with his mother. And by now I bet you're all wondering, hey Jacob, would you just explain why the book is called Hatchet already? Well fine, his mother gave Brian a hatchet before his flight took off. You know, for protection. Anyways, we're back on the Cessna with Brian thinking about the divorce and the secret multiple times, and the pilot just keeping his eyes on the non-existent road. But after a few page turns and a mini flying lesson with Mr. Name that starts with a J, Jimmy Jake suffers from a heart attack. Well, that didn't age well. Unfortunately, the pilot dies because of said heart attack, and it's up to Brian to control the plane and stop it from crashing. What could possibly go wrong? Once the plane starts to descend towards the endless swarm of trees, Brian tries to plan out in his mind how he's going to withstand the crash. He eventually decides that he would try to land the plane near a lake. But sadly, Brian overshoots his trajectory and ends up crashing into a wave of trees and plunges into the lake. He nearly drowns, but luckily, the author wanted to actually publish this story, so luckily, our 2 friends Grass and Lance show up to save him and the story itself. Brian then passes out due to the shock of what had just transpired. While unconscious, fragments of the sea flooded his memory, and woke up like he had just awakened from a nightmare. Imagine suddenly waking up and having to explain that dream.
What's wrong, son?
Please don't cheat on Mom.
Brian was now in awe to find out that he's still alive after that crash. However, he is in as bad of shape as the plane. He then ruminates again about how he's still alive after that trauma-inducing plane crash. Just when he thought he was out of the thick of it, 2 hours later, he now has to face a swarm of mosquitoes and black flies. And by the time the sun was heating up Brian, those bugs flew away like they were, and I quote,
Vampires, he thought.
After that incident, he then questions how he was able to survive that mosquito swarm, let alone the crash. And finally, Brian finds a pine tree to sleep on for the night, and would soon have to weather the harsh conditions that the Canadian wilderness has to offer. And that was the first few chapters of Hatchet, along with the overall plot of the story. I won't get into any more details about the story right now, but I will say that despite this book being meant for 10 to 14-year-olds, I still admire this book even as an adult. So if you're into the survival genre of reading, then Hatchet might be for you. And now, to wrap things up, here's one of my favorite passages to read in this book. Divorce. A breaking word. An ugly breaking word. Divorce. Secret.